Curse? I never remember.
All right. I think we're live. And to answer your question, Mia, yes, you can curse.
We can. We can. I'm always wondering that because like I got in trouble once for cursing, in a corporate event, and I'm like, I just curse naturally. So
I have a major potty mouth. I've been pretty good on here though.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But yes, very important question. Yes, you can curse. So that's how we're starting out our interview. If you can tell, Mia's very colorful.
Yes.
You are watching Wake Up Call Live with Christina Previtt. Thank you for joining us. And my special guest today is Mia Hewett. Mia is a business and success coach. That's cool. What I'm calling you, but I'm going to let you tell us what you do. Sure. And you're also the author of Meant for More. So thanks for joining me today, Mia.
Yay, it's so fun to be here.
I've been wanting to interview you for a long time. So I'm glad I finally did it and finally asked you.
Good. So, we're going to have fun.
I know I didn't really do the description any justice. Can you explain to us what you do?
That's okay. I actually help entrepreneurs or those who want to be entrepreneurs stop secretly struggling. Like they just know that there's a big part of them that felt like they're meant for so much more, but they just don't know what's holding them back or like why they seem to like hit the same internal ceiling over and over again. I help those people free what is in their way, and so that they can scale to 6 and 7 figures the easier way. That's what I do.
And I know I'm about to ask you a really broad and general question, but do you see, are there a few culprits that you see again and again that are holding people back? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes, but the way that it looks shows up differently. So what do I mean by that? So everybody has had their own unique trauma. So trauma is in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah. So in our society, we tend to think that the people who've experienced trauma are people who have been either severely abused or beaten or, in some severe case. And I'm not saying those are not trauma, but I can honestly say from all the entrepreneurs I've worked with with people who, a woman who she experienced her best friend being murdered, to being gang raped, to molestation, to rape, it can be various degrees of what people would call severe trauma, but also, entrepreneurs who grew up with a parent who was freaking moody and they felt like they had to walk around on eggshells, or a sibling that constantly berated them, like told them they were a dumbass, like over and over and over again. Like the trauma doesn't have to be so big because trauma is in the eye of the beholder. So trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
Right? And that makes
everybody's idea of stress and trauma is subjective.
Exactly. It's all perception based. That's why you can be in a family. Like I have 3 other sisters and we have the same parents. And if you were to ask us, how our childhood is, we're going to give you 4 different stories.
Yeah, that's true. I have had that conversation with people that you could have an interaction with somebody and both of you have a completely different perception of what that exchange was.
100%. And like what my sister's trauma is not my trauma, and my trauma is not her trauma. And so it's amazing how that happens, but it really does happen that way. So the reason, to answer your original question, is like, does it all come down to the same? If we like unravel at the end of it, where the trust got broken, because trauma happens when a trust got broken. And it's an emotional experience. So when that emotional bond or that emotional trust got broken, that point of where it happens, it will all feel the same, in the sense that they will feel like there was something wrong with them, that they're not worthy, they must not be lovable, that like the heart is the same. But I find that when we customize it and just unravel it to the person, then it frees them from the trap, because it's not just like they're trying to get their minds to believe something that they don't really feel.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what about the people that are listening and are saying, I had I had to walk on eggshells around my parents.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make up a situation.
Yeah.
I think this is a common one.
Yeah.
My parents were really critical. You know, I had to get all A's, and I had to be the best person on the sports team. And I had to, you know, like, you could never please them. Nothing was ever enough. But you might get people think, but that was in my childhood. I'm over that. That's, you know, that's not here now. Yeah. What would you say to someone who thinks that?
Yeah, I love that question so much, because that's what used to happen to me. And I would be like, what the heck's wrong with me? Like, I would constantly be taken out emotionally. And so what happens is, because trauma is emotional, right? It's not intellectual. Like, logically, if it doesn't make sense, that's why it pisses us off even more. Cause it's like, I'm an intelligent person. Like, I know better. Like, why does that person trigger me when, like, emotionally, like, it's all emotional. So you're being taken out emotionally. And so it's not logical at all. And so it makes sense, because if you understand that the root is emotional, it's not intellectual. It's not an intellectual. And see, this is where I really would love to scream from the rooftops that personal development has it wrong. They're trying to go into the mind and find it. It's not in the mind. The mind just holds the trap to continue the self-sabotaging pattern, because the mind has the self-talk that then just that critic that just keeps telling you the same story over and over again. But the emotional trigger, which is taking people out, is actually in the emotions. It's not in the mind. So you have to heal that emotional trauma, and then it frees the mind. Make sense?
So do you have to be aware of it in the first place then?
You will always be aware of it. You just won't find the trigger until I can help you find it. I can help anyone find it. We can find it like this. I can tell you what the questions to ask. It's in my book as well. But here's how you always know where the trauma is. It will be everywhere you get triggered. So everywhere you're going around and you're being triggered in life, like you feel like, people irritate you. And it's going to be always the same type of situation, like a different place, different face, same freaking irritation. It's going to be found in that rabbit hole. So if we go down that rabbit hole, and then we go down to, it's going to happen prior to 7 years old, is when it'll happen. And if we ask you, certain questions, I can ask you the questions, and we can literally find it within a few minutes.
Really?
Yeah. It's so easy to find once you know what you're looking for. It's just that what most people do. This is, and I'll give it to you here so anybody listening can get this, because it's really will blow your mind. Is that the biggest thing that you have to do? So before I take you there, is that you actually have to, since it's not found in the mind, you have to actually let go of the mind. So I often tell people, just close your eyes, and I want you to feel for it. You're going to find it through your feelings, not your mind. So I always say, just feel for it. And then I'm going to tell you what to do. But before I tell you, here's what I always tell them ahead of time, is as soon as you feel it, there's an image that will pop up into your conscious mind, because it's in your subconscious, and we're going to bring it right into your conscious. And I said, when that image pops up, do not judge it. Because here's what my entrepreneur, this is what everybody wants to do. They'll go, the image will come, and they're like, oh, that's just ridiculous. They want to judge it from now, right? Who you are at 40, who you're at 50, I'm 52. So it's like, they want to judge it from now and go, oh, that can't be it. That's ridiculous, right? And I'm like, no, do not judge it. Give me the pieces, and I'm going to show you how everything is trapped inside of that. And sure as shit, every freaking time, it's always the trap. So here's how you find it. This is the question you ask yourself. You can close your eyes, and you say to yourself, okay, I want you to remember time, and you're going to feel for it. I want you to remember time that before this image and this experience comes to your mind, that you totally trusted yourself. You totally trusted others, and you trusted life. Like, you felt the whole world was just here for you. Like, it was your playground. It was your oyster. Like, you were fearless. You didn't think there was anything you could not do. And then something happens. Something happened, and emotionally, that you didn't even know that could happen. And it scared you, startled you, shocked you, somehow confused you enough to start doubting yourself and thinking there was something really wrong with you. What happened?
Is it always a one specific thing?
It always starts from the original. So let me just give you one that I just did yesterday. So like, because it's so fresh in my mind. And so, because, like, this is how, like, it's so fascinating to see. So and every single time, even when people have read my book, they're like, oh my gosh, when I say that to them, they'll find the original one. So what people will often do is they'll think it's more, since they're trying to find it in their head, they'll go to the one that they think it is. Oh, well, when I was in high school, I got, raped, or when they'll go to something but actually the trauma started way beyond that. So like, let me give you an example. There was, a woman I was talking to. I'll give you this one, because we won't say her name, of course. There was a woman who, when I took her back through this, so her dad, she was, I think, about 6 years old, and her dad, like, flew off the handle at something. She never knew her dad could get that in a rage. She had never seen her dad before lose it. And he went into a rage, and she got so scared, but she stepped in front of her sister, because he was like, looked like he was going to hit her younger sister. So she stepped in front of him to protect the younger sister. And in doing so, he hit her right across the head. Right. And she never knew her father could do that to her. So, and when I asked her, like, well, what did you make that mean? And so her decision was that, like, that life was unfair, and that there was something wrong with her, but that life was unfair. Now, the same woman, now you fast forward, and, now all the unfairness keeps happening, right? She's the one who's, she ends up getting, like, her best friend is murdered. Like, then she has like, over and over, then she proves herself right over and over again, how unfair life is, life is. And what happens is that trap will continue, like, it'll keep happening. And then it'll cause us to, like, really, like, I know for myself, because my trap, like, what happened to me, and then it just kept happening over and over again. Same, different face, different place, same freaking trauma. And I remember thinking, like, I don't understand this God thing. Like, if God is supposed to be good, then why would he allow these bad things to happen? Right. So it caused me to like not trust life. Like, I really started, everything was about, how can I survive life? How can I survive life? How can I survive life? And it was a big wake up call for me to how I got to the point of, like, where it was like, this just can't be, like, something's just, and I've been reading tons of personal development since I was like 13 years old. And I've
that's young.
Isn't that young?
I didn't get on the personal development bandwagon until probably at least my 30s.
Yeah, I started reading it when I was 13 years old. I remember one of my first books was Eric Butterworth, Spiritual Economics, and that he was teaching, because we were so poor. I was like, I have to figure this money thing out. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I started working when I was 13. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to figure this out. And I started reading, like, every book I could get my hands on, in personal development and, existentialism and anything to do with anything with personal development.
Hardcore for a teenager.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think I was so trying to survive that I was just like, whatever I could get my hands on. And somebody had that. I don't even know who had that. And I was like, what's that? I'll read that. And, I started reading everything to try to understand it.
So what was your trigger? If you want to share that.
I'm 100% transparent. So I'll share anything. My whole book is about my story of, sharing all of my traumas and so forth. So what would trigger me? So so it'll all make sense. So when I was about 5 years old, my dad had, he had, I didn't know this back then because I didn't understand what he was doing. I was always afraid of my dad. So my dad was very, like, could fly off the handle, and I've never understood when he would do it. So it always scared me because I never saw it coming. So he was extremely moody. So he was either really funny and like the guy that was like life of the party, or really freaking crazy. Like, those are the two sides of my father. And so I remember, like, being 4 or 5 years old, and like, I knew by then I was like really shy, which is just a fear of judgment, right? I was so afraid of him correcting me and judging me and flying off the handle at me. So I like became this like really shy child or whatever. And I guess, you know what, he was going to decided he was going to toughen me up because he felt like there was no way I was going to make it in this world being that way. So we lived on a farm at the time, and he said, you know, he had called me to come outside. And I was wondering, like, why is he calling me? Because like my older sister was his favorite. She was like the boy that he never had, because we only had girls. And I was like, why is he calling me? And so like I'm like, okay. And so I'm going outside, and you know, I never saw this coming. And he was like, we're gonna kill a chicken. And well, but before he did that, he said, what's your favorite chicken? And I was like, and I didn't, again, I was so innocent back then. I was just like, oh, that one. Cause there was my favorite, Henny Penny. And I always played with her.
How old were you?
I was like 4 or 5.
Oh.
And then I remember I pointed her out, and then he was like, okay, we're going to kill her today. And I was like, I like literally got so confused. Like I didn't understand what was happening in that moment. My whole brain shut down. I literally like I would get totally confused. Didn't know what to say. I couldn't get my thoughts. My thoughts were firing so fast. I couldn't get my words to say anything. So I just said, like, I just froze. And then I remember him killing her, and then I had to pluck her. And I remember just crying. And then from that moment on, that was my trigger. And that was my trauma. And then from that moment on, I would run a freaking huge confusion pattern. Anytime I got scared, I would become the stupidest person in the room. Like my brain would stop working. I would become like completely mute, like, you know, like couldn't even make sentences. And here I am now, like I'm going to fast forward, right? So I'm like this really successful person, run a multi-million-dollar agency. And I would remember certain triggers, like there was this guy named Mark, who was a client of mine. He was just like my father, right? So he had that demeanor that my father had. And when he would walk into as soon as I would see him coming, I would start sweating profusely. I literally became the stupidest person. Like I would freeze again, like the whole trigger all over again, right? Yeah. Oh my God, it was so bad. Like, yeah, but that's what I mean by like where whatever your trigger is, it will show up the exact same way, different place, different. Anyone who resembles that until you heal it. And so now those people don't bother me whatsoever. Like,
when did you become aware of that though?
So when I was running this agency, you know, so successful, I felt just completely inadequate. Like I was like, how is it that I always had convinced myself that if I just became wealthy, like I would make it, like I would have arrived, like I don't know what I was expecting, but like, right? Like I was expecting like the angels depart and the world. I don't know what I was expecting.
I think a lot of people think that.
Because like no, right?
Yeah.
My whole life I felt like I was missing something, and I thought like, oh, if once I nail the success thing, like everything I thought I was missing was just gonna like I was gonna walk on like water, and like everything was just gonna like, you know, that shit didn't happen. Yeah, that didn't happen. So then I was like, okay, what the hell is this? Like, what is freaking wrong with me? And so I spent like $500,000 on my own coaching. I've worked with the best in the industry. And like the crazy thing to me is they would just say, well, like ultimately they were just like, well, just, you know, just think differently. Like I'd gone to 5 different therapists in my life, 4 or 5 different therapists, and they would make me aware of things that like, oh, well, that happened to you as a child at 5. Yeah. But then there was nothing they would give me to do about it. It was like, okay, now you're aware, but now you're just more aware. Now it's even more painful. At least ignorance was bliss.
Yeah.
Now I felt like I was this aware person that didn't like was even more painful. So I fucking hated it. So my biggest thing, like how I became aware of it, is I'll never forget this. I had paid a guy, very famous, best-selling author, $50,000 to coach me. And I just kept struggling under him, and I'm very coachable. So I did everything he said. And I remember him being so frustrated. And he said to me, and I said to him, like, what do you think I'm missing? Like, what is the missing piece? Because I always felt like I was missing something. And he was like, you know, Mia, you just need to go in your room and lock the door and not come out until you figure this out. And Christina, this is when the ghetto in me comes out.
I didn't know that you had that in you.
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm like, I don't need to fucking, like, I'm like, I don't need to fucking, if you tell me to do that, I gotta stay in my own fucking room by myself. Like, I was like going crazy.
Done that for free.
Exactly. That's my point. Like, money still like I still felt money. It's like, you don't forget being poor, even when you're wealthy. You still remember times of not having any money. Like, you don't forget.
Yeah.
You forgive yourself, but you don't forget. So I was like, what are you talking about? I just went like, that just blew my mind. But it was really what I needed. It was my wake up call, because I literally then became obsessed. And I'm not an overnight success. It took me 6 years of like literally like working at this 24/7 to unravel it all. So now I understand it all. So the reason why I kept thinking I was missing something is, and this is what everybody who feels they're missing something and they can't figure it out, it's all what you're missing is that original point of trauma. And once we unravel that, the whole thing unravels. Like everything, like it's literally like, have you ever seen the movie? It's the closest thing I can come to explaining what I'm saying. Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I don't know if I saw that one.
No? Oh, you would remember it if you have, because in the movie, I won't give it all away, but it's like the plot of it, the point, and then you can see it's a brilliant movie. I love the movie. I would love if somebody did that of my life and then show people how to heal trauma through it, because it's brilliantly spot on. Because he talks about in the movie how once an idea gets implanted into the mind, what happens is that's the origination of an inception. And then the person becomes confused between what is real and what is not real.
That makes sense.
That's exactly what happened to all of us. Like, oh my God, like this is exactly the point. So I call it inception in my book, right? I call it the point of inception, like, cause it's the closest thing I can get people to understand what the hell happened to them. But then like, once you see it, like, you're like, holy crap. Like when you wake up to the trap, then like all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, you see everything.
It's sort of like the Matrix too.
Yes.
It's like a Matrix feel.
Yes, that's exactly what it feels like. It literally is like that. It's like the Matrix.
So then where would you leave off with the coach who told you to just lock yourself in your room? Like, did you do that? Or were you like,
no, this is when I just became like, that's when I was like, okay, that was the day I woke up to going, okay, I'm going to stop thinking it's out there. And I'm going to start finding it in here. Like, I just was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to figure this out. And I had made a promise when I was like 13 years old to God, like when we were so poor and my dog died. And because our house was so infested with fleas, they literally sucked the blood out of him. Like our dog died in front of my eyes. Like, I was like, I remember praying to God going like, once I figure this out, like I find how to make money and like everything, I was like, I'm going to give it to the world. And so like, it was one of those like where I was just like, I'm going to give this to the world. Like I want people to know the truth of the trap, because once you see the trap, it's almost like you were in a movie and you were this character that you kept playing over and over again, like being triggered. And then when you wake up, it's like you came outside of the movie and you're like, I see everything now. Like I see everything and I don't have a voice anymore. Like people are always like, you don't have a voice? I'm like, no, because the fascinating thing is when I got so scared and I was like, it took my breath away. Like I can remember that day to a T and like frozen with fear. I remember like if I slow down slow enough, I remember becoming a certain way to then survive my life, to never have that happen again. So I took on an act, if you will. I didn't know I was doing it. I was like 4 or 5. Like, so people don't remember that they did it, but when I show it to them, they see it really clearly. But once I saw that and like I could see, wow, look at who I became to survive my life. That's when the voice starts. So the voice wasn't there until after you create, when you create that, when that trauma first happens, you create an ego, which is what the voice is. And so once you can see your ego and then you can see the act, which is why I love helping people, because how you get to know who you really are is when you see who you're not by the ego, and then you see who you are, which is always the opposite of it. the contrast is what gives you like, oh, like this is who I am. And so it was like the first time like I knew who I really was. Like I didn't really know who I was until the moment that I uncovered that. Like I was like always trying to be someone. Like I was
Yeah.
trying to be successful. I was
Yeah.
trying to be like a good person. I used to worry incessantly about what people thought about me. And more importantly, the fear that I was going to do something wrong. Cause that, like the fear of like when I remember feeling like, why is he calling me? Why is he calling me? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And then when that happened, it's kind of like I locked those emotions together. So anytime like I was going through life, I was like, what am I going to do wrong? What did I do wrong? Did I do that right? Did I do it wrong? Was that right? Was that wrong? And I always constantly doubted my abilities. And like, there was no evidence to doubt my abilities. Like I was always successful at whatever I did, but I would always doubt my abilities. And to this day, all of the entrepreneurs that I coach are like that. Even if they look successful, they're like the number one attorney. Like I just, had a girl just recently, she's like a number one attorney, wins every single award. And she's constantly in fear that she's, not going to do it right, not going to be smart enough.
Isn't that incredible? It really seems to be the most common affliction. And
Totally.
I wonder if there's anybody who doesn't struggle with that.
No, I haven't.
You at all ever now?
Yeah, like struggle with what?
Just those feelings of self-worth, or is it just that when you see it popping up, you're able to deal with it and kind of compartmentalize it?
No, I love that's a great question. So once we heal it, it's not coping anymore. I don't actually feel not worthy at all. Like at all. Like I don't struggle with that at all. And the reason is because once you heal the trauma, you're no longer coping. See, the problem is when the trauma is underneath everything you're doing. If you think about that, it's like having a house that has a shoddy foundation.
Yeah.
Then everything feels like you have to work so much harder to overcompensate. Like that's why, to the other side of it, some of my successful people that come to me, not everyone's successful, but like those that are successful, they're like, Mia, but if you heal this is the only reason I have the success I have. And if you heal this, what if I become one of those lazy people? That's what they always say to me. And I'm like, the cool thing is, I really know you think that, because that's their biggest fear. They're like, if you take away my driver, because what's been driving me is this insecurity. And now you take away my insecurity. I really want you to, but I'm afraid if you take it away, I'm going to be a lazy ass person, sit on the couch all the time. And I always say, this is the cool thing. Actually, it doesn't work that way. See, that's the way the mind thinks, because you're trying to compartmentalize it. Like the girl yesterday, she was like, I'm afraid that if I really get rid of this, that I'll either be a really big bitch, like I'll be like worse, like I'll be really bad because I'll be afraid of my own power. Like she thought that she would become superiority ego, right? Where she often is an inferiority ego. And I said to her that the cool thing is it actually doesn't work that way. But when we're in the trauma still, we only think it can be this or this. But the truth is, when you heal it, what you do is you keep all of the strength of who you are, but you let go of the weakness.
Because the weakness is what's holding you back.
Every freaking time. Every freaking time. Not once in a while, every freaking time.
You know what I think is interesting about the bitch comment too? Because this comes up so much with my conversations with my girlfriends.
Yeah.
No matter what they do, whether they're entrepreneurs or not. We are so preoccupied with being perceived as a bitch.
Yeah.
So first of all, what the hell's a bitch anyway? I mean, we could talk for an hour just about that. I think that's different things to different people.
Yeah.
But do you have any insight about that? But why are women so preoccupied with being viewed as a bitch?
Yeah, because the number one fear behind every single person, like, and again, I don't operate from there anymore because I've healed it. But prior to healing it, it would be mine as well. The number one concern that every single person has is the fear of looking bad. So the fear of other people's judgments. So why the bitch is like, then just makes that even more pronounced, right? Is because it's like, oh my God, if I really say what I really want to say, that's on my mind that I'm not saying, then I'm going to, well, what if I'm perceived as a bitch, or I'm perceived, like, who am I to really say that? Did I say that right? Maybe I did that wrong. Or they start second guessing themselves where, and it is true, when you're trying to compensate, you will come off as a bitch. But if you remove the compensation and you just are straight with people, I'm really straight with people, but I'm not a bitch. And what I mean by that is, when I'm straight with people, there's no shame or guilt behind it. So I'm just being straight to be straight, not to be like, let me make you wrong and let me point it out to you, all your flaws. That's not where I'm coming from. I will, there are a lot of times people say to me, they'll say something, let's give an example. They'll say, well, I really felt that way, Mia. How can you say, like that? Actually, I remember a client a long time ago. She said, Mia, I'm really struggling. My mother died, and that's why I'm struggling, because, I really depended on her for support. And I said that I'm sorry, but that's not true. And she's like, no, Mia, I don't think you understand. Like, she thought I didn't hear her. She's like, I don't think you understand. Like, my mother died, and because of that, like, I'm really struggling. I said, I'm sorry, that's not true. It's valid, but not true. And she's like, what do you mean? How can you say that to me? And I said, because the truth is, your mother died. The reason why you're struggling is because you think she shouldn't have. Your mom died only one time. You make her die every freaking day. For how many years has she been dead? And like, last 6 years, it's like, you have to separate what is valid and what is true. It's valid that you feel that way. It is valid she felt that way.
Yeah.
But truth would mean that, like, for something to be true, and I'm always coaching truth, not opinions, but for it to be true, that would mean that it's actually happening right now. Like, for it to be true, it would have to be like gravity. Gravity is truth, right? Whether you understand gravity or don't understand gravity, gravity just is. It would have to be truth, extends context, culture, religion, like time, space, reality. Like, it's just truth, right? And I'm like, that's not true, but that's valid.
Right?
Exactly. And here's the biggest mistake we make as humans, right? When we understand who we are and what it means to be a human, how to master this body and our potential. The biggest mistake I see people make is that what we'll do, and I used to do this before, is like, we will frame problems as statements. So what is the worst thing we could do? Because it convinces our brain that those things are a fact and not a problem that just needs a solution, right? And the opposite is what we need to do. So if what keeps us stuck in the problem is framing it as a statement, when what we need to do to find what the answer, the solution is we have to do the opposite. We have to get curious. You see, like, we have to be, right?
Can I give you like an example? And this is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to, because it's something that comes up a lot. Let's say you have an employee that is just, not being productive, not doing what he or she needs to do.
Yeah.
A lot of women will worry, well, I don't know how to confront this person about what they're doing, because every time I offer any criticism or, anything negative, right? Like, if I'm not praising them and I'm telling them that they did something wrong, I'm automatically a bitch. Like, there's no way for me to communicate to this person that they have done something wrong without me being a bitch.
Yeah. So I love this. I love this question so much. So the first thing that I would have you look at, or have anyone who's feeling that way look at, is most oftentimes the reason that we are afraid of looking like the bitch is because we don't know how to process our own emotions. So the first thing we want to do is process how we're feeling before we communicate it to the person. Like, how we be really effective with communication is we have to process what we're feeling, because when we don't process it and then we say it from reacting, it never comes out well. It doesn't land right. Then there's repercussions to that, right? Because by the law of cause and effect, the effect that comes back to us is not really the one we wanted. Even if we feel good in the moment, it has a backlash and we never feel satisfied or fulfilled. So the way I always say it is like, first, I want you to process how you're really feeling. So whatever the person did, I want you to first ask yourself, what am I making this mean? Because the reason you're reacting or feeling negative emotion of any kind is you're giving it a meaning of something. When you can clear the meaning, like you can see the meaning, oh, I was making it mean what, like something about you. Maybe like I'm a bad boss, or like I must be a failure to have an employee do something I don't want her to do. Like there's something you're making it mean about you. And then once you can see the meaning, now you want to separate the truth from the lie. Like this is where it's valid that you're feeling this way, but what's the truth? Like what's the lie? What's the truth? And so what you'll find is once you find the truth and you let go of the misunderstanding that you were making it mean about you, now you've come back into alignment within yourself. Like you've processed your emotions. Now you don't have that like, ugh. So now when you go to say to this person, it comes out totally different because you're in alignment. So you're like, it comes out like, hey, I see that you did X, Y, and Z. I'm just curious. I'm curious, why did you make that decision? Or what had you do it that way? And then from curiosity and getting their feedback, now you can see what there is to put in, right? Like sometimes it's because the way where the communication misses is we think they know what we want them to do, but we actually don't have a standard operating procedure for that. And so they're just winging it. And, or this is another one I see oftentimes is we think we know, they know what we really want them to do, but we didn't really, in setting them up for success, we never sat them down and said, okay, on the list of things that you're going to have to do every day, you need to focus on these top ones because this 20% is going to give 80% the results from your position. And for you to be successful at your job and for us to always be able to use you and you to be maximized in your position, these 20% are the keys that you must achieve. Like now all of a sudden they're like, oh crap. So then when they think something's a priority and it's not, they don't focus on it because they know what the exact 20% it needs to happen for them to be successful in that position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I understand how you can be mindful of if you're coming from an emotional place,
Yes.
but you can't control what the other person is experiencing.
Correct.
So
Correct.
they have their own trauma, their own trigger, they're having their own experience with this.
Correct.
So how do you handle it when, like, let's say I give myself a pep talk before I have to have the conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Hey, you fucked up. Well, I'll say it nicer than that, but
Yeah.
so then I go to have that conversation, but they get triggered because, they just don't like me telling them what to do. Like there's some dynamic there that doesn't work.
Yeah. So I would still ask you the same thing. Like, what are you making that mean when they react? See, because I actually, because I don't take it personal, when somebody reacts, if they react to it, most of the time they just go frozen is what I see they do. Like they'll just go like this and like they'll just become like deer in the headlights. But if they react, whatever their reaction is, you can see the trauma. And then, again, what are you making it mean? Like, I don't make it mean anything. I acknowledge it. So I'll say something like, I can feel like this is upsetting to you, or I can feel like this is, shocking to you. Is that true? I always check in because I never assume that the word I'm going to use is the word they would define it as. Because words are really important. Like, this, right? Like somebody could say like the word crisis, and that may mean one thing to one person and a completely different thing to another. So words are really important. So I never want to assume that's the word they would use to describe it. So I always say, is that true? Like, I'm feeling like you're a little irritated right now, or you're upset about something. Is that true? And then they'll say, and they always do this. They'll say no, and then they'll go, and then they'll tell you the truth, right? And then they're like, no, but it's just that when you said this, I really felt like that. It's okay. They're always going to discount, but then they're going to tell you what it is. just trust that it's always going to come behind them saying no. So they'll say no. And again, where does this all come from, Christina? Like, let me show you why this all happens. Because who here has been raised by a family where you were allowed to express your emotions? I'm sorry, I've never met one person in my family. What happened, if you expressed your emotions, you either got the silent treatment and people stopped talking to you for days, or you got the belt, or you got the soap in the mouth. Like, I don't know about, like, I've never coached anyone who had this completely, they were allowed to express their feelings and they were taught how to manage their, like how to process their emotions. And I've never met those people. I coach it. I tell all of my people, I coach them how to do it. And then I teach them how to teach their children to do it. So they raise children who are like amazing communicators and don't take anything personal and can really be in communication. But it is not the norm.
No, it's not.
No.
I mean, I'm thinking back to some things, and it's true. And I have a goddaughter. I try to be mindful of that. Her iPad won't work, and she'll start flipping out. And my initial, and I have said this to her before. It's like, don't cry. Like, this is not, a thing to cry about. But then I read somewhere, that you shouldn't do that because then you're invalidating their feelings.
Correct. Like what I would do is the opposite. I would just say, wow, it looks like this is really upsetting you. Is that right? What would you like to share about how you feel right now? Oh, I feel really, I'm just really angry, or I'm really sad. And oftentimes I will give them the words because they don't know what they're feeling. So I'll say, like, do you feel angry, or are you upset? Or are you sad? Or are you frustrated? Because different words mean different things of what they're feeling. But whatever it is, I'm just helping them find the word to what they're feeling. And then once they get it validated back, like, oh, wow, like I really got that this is upsetting for you. Like, this is really, whatever word they use, I use that one back. I don't make up a word, right? Mm-hmm. But once you do that, and then you say, is there anything else you want me to hear about that? Like, they just want to be heard. Yeah. So when you let her express it and then you repeat it back. And so when I mean, let her dump it all out. So like and what else would you like to share with me? Oh, well, da, da, da. Oh, great. I totally get da, 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 da. And what else? Like, anything else you want to share about this? And then they'll get to a point where they've emptied it all out. Like, all the feelings have been processed. And they're like, no. And I'm like, great. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Right? Like, and then it's over. It literally
doesn't become bad. It doesn't become good. Like, it's not characterized as anything.
No, because as soon as what happens is when we make it that's when it becomes like, now their ego is going to fight our ego. Like, now it's a battle between the two egos, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I think as I've gotten coaching and matured over the span of my lifetime, I have become very sensitive to anybody who tells me how I should feel.
It's the same with the kids. They feel the same way. It's like everybody feels the same. But this is why, even when going back to the person, that's why the person who's working for you, it's the same thing. They're like so afraid of their own, because here's why. I'm going to go back to this original trauma. Because when the original trauma happened, we were not allowed to process those emotions, right? Like, if I was allowed to express how I felt about my chicken being killed, it would not have made me, at the end of it would not have been a big deal. Like, not that I'm saying I wouldn't have been upset that my chicken wasn't there, but I would have not been able to I wouldn't have felt frozen inside and felt like I had to carry this around, and that I wasn't allowed to share my feelings. I put it in my mind that when you tell people that, like, you love something, they're going to take it away from you. So, like, to me, I made it mean, and I carried that for a long time. Like, I'm not going to ever let someone get too close to me, and I'm definitely not going to tell them what I love, because if I tell you what I love, you're going to take it away from me. And so there was like this huge, like, I'm not going to let you in. Like, and then I was always like, oh, see, you didn't love me. And then I proved myself right that I wasn't lovable, because I never really let them in, and they never then really let me in. And then it was like, see, I knew you weren't going to love me.
But it's a common one. I mean, it's a story that we've heard. But I feel like and I see a lot of this going around, and I know I've done it too.
Yeah.
Where, let's say, someone says something to me or does something, and I get upset and I feel insulted. Yeah. And then I'll express that I feel insulted. And then they will try to convince you that you are wrong, that you weren't being insulted. And I would, in the past, I would have continued the argument. But now what I say is, you may not have meant it that way, whatever the dynamic was, but I'm still entitled to feel how I felt. Like, don't tell me that I'm wrong because I felt under attack or because I felt insulted.
Exactly. Because that's what I mean by like what the ego then tries to fight the other ego. Because what happens is, because we're not taught to just acknowledge someone's feelings and not make it mean anything about us. Like what you can do, just so to give you power, is what you can always do though, is even though people don't know this skill, you can ask for it. Like you can say, hey, I really feel insulted. Would you just do me a favor? And could you just really acknowledge that, like, when you said that, I really felt insulted. Just if you like, I just want to hear that you acknowledge it, right? When you get somebody to acknowledge it, not like they don't have to agree that they insulted you, but because here's the thing that I'm most wanting to make sure I'm expressing is we have this misbelief. This comes from childhood because our parents never acknowledged us. Like they never acknowledged our feelings. And so we have this misunderstanding that, first of all, to acknowledge someone is like to admit you're wrong.
Yeah.
And we cannot be wrong.
Yeah.
So we cannot be wrong because that's when bad things happen, and we can't admit defeat of any kind. So we're going to hold on to like our position of we have to be right. So what I like to really help people see is acknowledgement doesn't equal agreement. It just because I acknowledge that that's what is how you felt, it's more of like I'm validating that's really how you felt. But that doesn't mean that I felt the same way. It doesn't mean I'm agreeing or saying it's the truth that both of us felt that way. But to not acknowledge it is not to validate someone's experience.
Yes. And I think that triggers me because I hate this expression. We've probably all heard this. Oh, you took it the wrong way.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with me. I'm defective somehow. Yeah. Like, you can tell I'm being triggered already and it hasn't even happened.
Exactly.
Like, don't tell me that I took it the wrong way. Maybe what you need to think about is, could I have said that better?
Yeah.
And
I just feel like the person just needs to validate. Like, it's like, wow, like I really get that, that really impacted you. You felt insulted. Like, what else would you like to share about that? Like, how else did that make you feel? Because once I get the communication, then the way that I would, handle it is, I would acknowledge it. I would always acknowledge it because it's whatever it is true for them. And then once I've acknowledged it, and I would then say, hey, thank you so much for sharing that with me, because actually that wasn't my intention. My intention was ... right?
Yes.
But then you're not discounting the way it landed. And inside of being like, I mean, at the level I'm operating at, I'm being responsible for all communication. Like I'm taking full responsibility for the impact of any of my words, right? Like, I mean, the bigger you get, like I had, this is just perfect timing for this one, is like, I had someone ask me recently that, hired me, and she says, well, Mia, how will you help me avoid haters? And I started laughing. And I said, girl, that's not the choice. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, no, you don't have a choice. As you scale, the bigger you play, the more influence you have, the more impact you have on people, the more people have eyeballs on you, you're going to have haters. That's not the choice. The choice is, are you going to choose to give your power away to the haters? Like, I have tons of people every day write me an email. Oh my God, your book changed my life. And then there will be 1 out of 50 or 1 out of 80 that will go, you're so self-absorbed. You're, like, I can't believe people, you're narcissistic. Like, somebody's going to hate what I'm saying.
But isn't it because you triggered something in them?
Totally. But that's why I can take it not personal, right? Because I'm like, ooh, there's a trigger right there, because I can see trauma. So it's like, even when people, like, even a woman in my community, she wrote me an email back, and she said, from the book, and she goes, Mia, I love everything you say, but your grammar is just horrid. And I said to her, and she's like, your readers deserve better than having all of these typos. And I wrote her back and I go, thank you so much for sharing. I totally agree with you. Like,
What's she
I,
gonna say, right?
I totally freaking agree with you. Like, my grammar is not good. I grew up in South America. I learned Spanish, and then I didn't understand English, and they had to put me back 2 years, and I missed a whole slew of grammar, and I still run this crap through Grammarly, and it doesn't catch everything. So I'm agreeing with her. I'm like, girl, if you're looking for me to be the grammar queen, you are not in the right. Like, you're gonna hate I don't like. Thank God my success doesn't depend on my grammar, because like, it's amazing how bad my grammar is. And
You grew up in South America. Where did you grow up?
yeah. My dad is Latin. My dad is from Venezuela. My mom is American. I grew up in the jungle of Venezuela until I was 13. My parents divorced when I was 13. We lived in Puerto La Cruz and Puerto Ordaz, and we lived in the jungle when it was jungle back then. I had grew up with a pet monkey. We had toucans. We had macaws. Yeah, we used to catch tarantulas. We didn't have.
Because I would not have thought you were Venezuelan.
I am. My dad is. He died, but my dad is Latin from Caracas. Born and raised in Venezuela. My mom is American, and they met while my mom had gone over to Venezuela. My grandfather built the Orinoco Railroad, and while he was there, like, my mom was a student there, and my mom and dad met, and that's how we became to be. But yeah, my dad was Latin, my mom's American. So
I never knew that.
yeah, and the only one that looks like him, the only one that looks like him is because there's 4 girls, and so the first 3 are like blonde and like green eyes or blue eyes. I don't even know what our eyes are, but and then white skin. But the baby has, because my dad had green eyes, even though he was Latin. So he has olive skin and dark brown black hair, but olive skin and green eyes. And so the baby, my younger sister, she's the only one that looks like him. So my younger sister is like, looks like nothing like me. She's like completely tans in the sun,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sisters.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time. And I have a series of 5 questions that I want to ask you.
Sure.
So what is the one truth that you have learned over the course of your life that's made a huge difference in the way that you live your life?
Totally my trauma, like understanding what caused it, why it was running the pattern I was running, why I kept having the same things happen to me over and over again, thinking it must be like I must be all alone, or like somehow I was doing it wrong, so God didn't like really love me and I was being punished for it. Like, that was all what I thought like was really happening to me with, but then when I freed all that, that is literally the greatest freedom that I have ever experienced, because it really frees me from everything. Like, that is the number one thing, that when people say they want to be free, I really know what they really mean. Because what they really mean, they think it's time, money, that they always say the same things, like they think it's money or time. But really, true freedom is when you are emotionally and mentally free.
Yeah.
Is the most like nothing compares to my freedom that I have. I have the greatest freedom emotionally and mentally, and that is worth way more than any millions I will ever have.
Yeah, I think anybody struggling with that would agree.
Yes.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self?
What would I tell my 20-year-old self? Gosh, I would tell her, stop trying to enlighten your ego. Your ego is never going to be enlightened. I would love for somebody to have told me that a long time ago. Like, I kept thinking that I could enlighten myself. Like, I thought I was my ego. And then I thought that my work was to enlighten it. So I've spent too long and too much time in trying to get my ego to stop being insecure, when I just didn't understand it wasn't ever about my ego. I have to let go of my ego to actually be my true self.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have that issue.
Mm.
What do you hope people say about you when you're not in the room?
I don't really care about what people say. This is the funniest thing about me, because I really am free of this. So I don't care about what people say, because I always see it as like, wow, like I can see it's really all about more about where they're coming from than it is anything to do with me. Even when people go, oh my God, you wrote the most amazing book. Like that was awesome. I wrote the book because I wrote it for my ideal client, because that's what they always said to me. They would always say to me, I just feel like I'm meant for so much more, but I'm always struggling. And so I wrote the book, Meant for More, How to Stop
I love
Secretly.
the title.
Right. But here's the book I would have written if you would have asked me, like, what would be my title? Nobody's fucking coming. Nobody's fucking coming. So nobody needs to fucking come. So let me just tell you exactly how the life really fucking works. But nobody would have bought that book probably, because it didn't really resonate.
That word in it.
I mean, that's what the book I would have read. I would have, if it was really just me, I'd be like, nobody's fucking coming. Here's the manual on how to fucking live life to the fullest and stop giving a shit about what everybody else thinks. And this is how you're going to master your life. Because that's really how, that's really how I live.
Coming, you mean like no one's going to rescue you? There's no one else that's going to fix this?
No, because the missing piece that everybody thinks they have, which they do, it is valid. They really feel like they're missing something, and they are. They're missing the origination of the day they created their own trap. The problem is they forgot that they're the ones who fucking created it. So the whole time they keep thinking someone outside of them, some book, some show, some TV, some guru, some other person out there is going to save them. And I'm always saying to my people, I'm not fucking saving you. I'm showing you how to save yourself. I'm going to give you, I'm an expert at it. I will give you, I will take you exactly by the hand, step by step, paint by number. You cannot fail with me, right? You really can't fail with me, because I know exactly what the hell I'm doing. And I'm still not the one doing it. You are the hero of your own life's journey. My work is to show you exactly how to heal yourself, but it's your work, right? Yeah. And when they really get that and they really truly own it, they fly. Like I had a girl just recently, she started working with me one-on-one in less than 2 months. She just sold in this market. She closed a $1.2 million deal. And she had never closed anything that big before. But when you change the way you see yourself, the way you see yourself changes, right? So she had never saw herself, even she owned her own company. She never saw herself as a big player before. And so when we healed her original trauma, now she was free to actually be this big player. And when she started being the big player, she closed a big player deal. So other people can look at it and go, oh, it's a miracle. It's not. When you understand exactly the order of how things work, it just makes freaking sense. It's just that nobody teaches us. So we think it's luck. Yeah. You know, it's not luck.
Yeah, our parents sure didn't.
Yeah.
They needed a coach too.
Yeah.
If you could only keep one of your accomplishments, which one would it be?
I could only keep one. Definitely like the book, leaving, like, because people have really woken up with that book. So I would say the book, because it has helped the most amount of people. I can only help 10 people at a time. I take 10 people through. So like that book can reach so much far more greater people than I could ever do, because I believe in quality over quantity. So you'll never find me trying to coach 500 people or 1,000 people, because there's no way I can get that many results for people. It's an illusion. I don't believe in that at all. So the book would be like my greatest.
What about the whole Tony Robbins thing? Like you
cannot heal 5,000 people in a room, because everybody doesn't have the same trauma. So what happens is they don't have the same trauma. They don't even perceive it the same. Again, it's only when because what I'm basically really doing is I'm unraveling their consciousness. I'm healing the emotional trauma in their body, and then I'm unraveling their consciousness. And so how can you do that for 5,000 people when 5,000 people have had 5,000 different traumas in the way they perceive it? Like, it's not possible. So what happens is it lands as like a good feel good. Like it feel goods in the moment when you're like just giving them
a pep rally.
A pep rally would be a better way to say it. It's like, yes, and are there, and I'm not discounting, because like, are there some people that maybe they've already done so much work, and that there is something that's said in that then pings that original decision, what they created when they were 5 or 6. Could that happen to people? Of course. But is it going to happen to 5,000 people? There's no freaking way. Like where in my little thing, I'm 10 people in 8 weeks, all 10 people go, have that breakthrough. So it's like, it's just a different way. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I just believe in quality. I just wanted people to do to me what I've done for people. Like, I've never found anyone who did that to me. Like, everybody had their own agenda. I don't have an agenda. My only agenda is to get, the results that you want. Like, I don't really care about like looking good and doing it the way I think is the right way, or trying to get significance from, I don't really care about those things. Those things don't drive me. So I don't know.
I got to read your book. I'm sorry I haven't read it.
No, it's okay. Totally cool. It's fun. It's good.
So final question, what's your favorite failure?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I know I sound like a broken record. I would guess that, like, for sure it has to be the fact that I failed with so many bigwigs in personal development trying to get this solved. I actually was just thinking they were going to help me solve it. And I didn't really know that I would become this. So I guess my biggest failure became my greatest success, right? The funny thing is I don't look at failure the way people look at failure. So here's how I coach that. Like, I have to leave it because I don't think of failure as failing. Yeah. How I think the only way we can ever fail at anything is that we fail to actually like go deeper into it and go, what did I like acknowledge whatever happened? Like, if we don't, step one, if we don't acknowledge what happened, then we pretend, we just cover it up or put our head in the sand like an ostrich. So if we don't acknowledge, number two, if we don't learn from it, like if we don't get like, well, what was the gift that I got? Like by having that, what was the gift? There's always a gift in everything. So it's like, if we don't get the second one, we don't get the learning or the gift, or step three, we don't then adjust what we're doing and then implement so that it never happens again. So the truth is, I like to say, how do we succeed at failure?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Well, Oprah has a great quote that I love. It's, and we screw it up. It's, failure is just pointing you in a different direction. Yeah.
I mean, right? It's just
and then actually there is another question I told you I was going to ask is, what can you share with us a book that's had a profound impact on you?
Sure.
Not your own book.
No, I know. Cause right. I know it doesn't have to be my book. I know spiritual economics was such a big one, but that would not be there's one that, a recent one. I know you probably know it too.
My book list is really growing significantly.
Yeah. No, there's one that I love on money. You probably know it. Let me just see if I have it on my desk, because it's like you asked me this too, and I'm like, I totally thought about it, and then I like totally.
Yes, is it Rich Dad Poor Dad?
No, but that was a good one. That like really impacted.
Grow Rich.
What is it?
Think and Grow Rich?
No, the science, but you hit it though.
Science of Getting Rich.
The Science of Getting Rich. That is definitely one that I absolutely love. Wallace Wattles. I absolutely love that one. That was a really good one. That to me was more than all of those, just for whatever, and it could have been the timing, how that's the timing of it. But that one was really huge for me. Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time, and I want people to know how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in talking more about your services.
Yeah, like I sent it to, I don't know if I put it in the chat, but I don't know if that will go out to everybody. But they can get an access to my free book, like only if they use that link, and then only if they use that password, because otherwise there's a charge, everywhere else. But if you use that underneath your show notes or any kind, then
I'm gonna do that now. I see it here. I didn't see it earlier.
Yeah, they'll be able to just because they listen to your show, they'll be able to. Yeah. Yay. That's it. Yay. Yeah. That'll be good.
Meant for more book. I when I first saw it, I thought it said Miami.
Oh, really? That now you and I are thinking alike. We need a vacation, right? Like, it's like, I'm done with this like quarantine stuff. Let's go have some fun. I know we need to be safe, but I'm so ready for everything to get back. And I always say to people, I've been an entrepreneur 31 years, and these things do not turn around on a dime. So do not be waiting for this to be short lived, because
Yeah.
it's not. And you know this, right? This is never short lived. Like,
keep going.
it's going to take a while. It takes 18 months for them to come up with a vaccine. And then on top of the 18 months, then just to manufacture it is another how many people. So just please do not be waiting. Whoever's listening, do not be waiting. You need to retool, repurpose, relaunch what you can, solve problems
Hustle,
with.
hustle, hustle. That's what I say. Just keep hustling.
Yeah, you really do. It's really a mistake to like wait. Don't wait. It's going to be a long-term.
Well, that's like perfect advice for anything. Even if this wasn't going on, right? It's like, what are you waiting for? Just a big quote that I post all the time.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for your time, and I'd love to have you on again. And have a great day. Anybody who's watching, please feel free to grab a free copy of the book. Have a great day.
You too.